The Captain's Log Radio, with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome to the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss, and with me, I've got one of the fishiest dudes I know, who's also one of the best boat restorers in Central Florida. Of course, that's Nick Bonura from Florida Skiffs. Nick, my man, I got you still as Beagle Guy in my phone. How are you, dude?
Good, good. I'm glad you brought that up. That story goes back quite a while now.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
yeah, that's actually how we met. Is I had Stella. She's still with us today, and you were wanting a dog, and you saw how much adventures we'd take her on the boat, and that's
Yep.
actually how we started becoming friends way back in the day.
Yeah, and honestly, very few people know this. The first episode of the Captain's Log was actually filmed with you.
Yep.
And this was way back before anything actually happened with the show. We launched the show in May of 2020. I think we filmed this maybe 2018, maybe 2019. And nothing ever happened with that. But you were the first. So thank you for letting me cut my teeth, figure
Yep.
out what we were doing. And we filmed in the lagoon. But anyways, you are based here in Central Florida. You own Florida Skiffs, and you are a boat restorer. And
Yep.
and I that was a big process with, well, obviously we were already friends, we were already knew each other, but you had a, what was it? It was a karma, something karma,
Yep. Bossman Karma.
boss man karma, and it was falling apart.
Yep.
And you did something that I think is really awesome and takes a lot of courage. And you tore the thing apart, dude. Like
Completely,
you just
completely
said, you
apart.
know what? Forget about it, man. I'm gonna just beat this thing to death since it's already broken, and you went after it. Tell me about
Yeah.
that.
So I actually started my boat journey over at Bossman Boats, so I was pretty familiar with them. And then I had a chance to buy a Bossman Karma, and I had it. And one day I was fishing out in Tampa Bay, and I was like, man, the back of this boat seems like it's sitting pretty low. And I jumped down in my cockpit, and there was water billowing out of the bottom of my cockpit into my cockpit.
Mm.
So the leak was somewhere. I didn't know where it was at the time. And I'm over in Tampa, probably 10 miles away from the boat ramp, and that's big
Oh,
water out there. Yeah,
yeah.
so I tucked it as tight into the mangroves as I could, got it up on plane, just in case if I needed to, I could land it in the mangroves, right, and keep it afloat and assess what's going on. Fortunately, I got back to the boat ramp, put the boat up on the trailer, and I realized the deck and the hull were separating.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yep, the original idea was we were just going to bond the hull back to the deck. And then at that time, I had a couple years under my boat, not enough years to do what I was about to do. But we decided that I was just going to, I loved the boat, I loved the way it fished. Everything else about it I didn't like. So we were going to take the time to rip it apart and completely like build the boat of my dreams.
Mm.
And so yeah, we used a floor jack and a rusty fishing knife that we had to completely rip the deck off. And it was a year of saving funds, just paying for the little things that you need during these repairs. And yeah, changed absolutely everything about the boat, not just the color scheme. We made a custom coffin box in the middle. I reinforced the floor because it was oil canning really bad. There's a lot of flex in the boat,
Oil
all the way
canning.
down.
Explain that. I don't know that term.
So oil canning is a term. So if I put a cooler up in the front of my cockpit
Okay.
and there was any chop in the water, by the time I got to my fishing spot, the cooler was in my lap. The boat would sit there and act like a wave. Like every wave you would hit, you would see it on the bottom of the floor. Um,
Ah,
to the point that everybody that got in that boat, I had to warn them, like, hey, the floor is going to seem like super weird when we're running. It's normal. It's okay. Um, And in the boat building process, that's just I got one of the early models. So when they built it, I actually got the first one out of the mold.
Okay.
So when they're doing their layup, they were kind of guessing as far as, hey, what kind of strength do we need in the floor? And since my boat, they had to change a bunch because that was a huge ordeal and a big problem that they had.
Hmm.
Um, so I've reinforced the floor to stop all that. Went with the coffin box in the middle. Not only does it add some structure, there was just no storage on the boat. So the coffin box has a built-in cooler and an area to put all my baits, tackle, anything I needed throughout the day. Even like to changing the hinges, I changed all of my rod tubes from forward facing to back facing because it's a tiller boat, and I got tired of when you want to jump and run to different spots instead of two people in the back of that little skiff crowding each other while I'm trying to get the motor ready and they're trying to put the rods away. Now the person on the front can just stow their rods away and I'm clear in the back. So
Understood.
there was a lot of thought that went into it, and that was really the beginning stages like of my company. I knew I always wanted to start a company, but that was really like the little fire, I guess it started it because I got to be the client, right? I got to
Yeah.
look at this boat and say, I love it, but I really wish some things were different on it. And I think that me having to go through it and the mistakes that I made on that boat that now I look at and I'm like, man, I wish I didn't do it that way. I wish I did it this way. Or I wish I'd fixed that because now it really stands out to me. Um,
Hmm.
all that I think being at what I do in restoring boats, I think me having a chance to be the client at one point, even though I was doing it by myself, I understood the excitement that goes around with it. But I also kind of know how to point out the things like, hey, you might want to think a little bit deeper into this because of reason A, B, C.
No, that's great, dude. No, and part of that when you were documenting this boat process, this boat rebuild, and I honestly I was fascinated.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't see this kind of stuff on social
Yep.
media very much. And so seeing you tear things apart, hey, here's what I'm going to do. This is the direction I'm going to go. Here's why. You were thinking, we could see the wheels turning, we could see the vision. And then
Yep.
every little bit, you just, all right, here's an update, here's a post. And then next thing you know, man, you got that boat dialed in and finished. And I remember you were spraying the non-skid, and I was like, bro, that looks fantastic. Like, I want to learn how to do that. I want to have, my older skiff redone. And now the non-skid, it's been 10 years of guiding in that boat.
Yep.
The non, it's pretty smooth up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a buddy, I fished with a buddy on his boat, and he had just had the boat waxed, and they put wax on the deck and it transferred to my shoes.
Oh
And then I
no.
went fishing the next day on my boat, and I got on. I about fell off because my boat's so slick. My old boat is so
Hmm.
slick that because all the non-skid's kind of worn off. And having that wax on my shoes, I mean, I about slid right off the front of the boat. So
Yeah.
seeing you go through that process, I was like, man, this is fascinating. There was a TV show for a long time. It was very, very popular. My dad and I watched it, I mean, on the regular, and it was Ship Shape TV.
Yep.
And
Yep.
what they did is if you're not familiar, those who are listening aren't familiar, they would get a boat and they would hear what the client wanted to do, or it would be their own personal boat, and they would tear it apart and redo it. My dad and I would watch that and learn things all the time. And even if we didn't learn something, it was just fascinating to sit and watch the build process. And there was a lot of advertisement in the show. They used specific brands, and those
Hmm.
brands would come in and talk, but you still learned a lot about boats and a lot about
Yep.
building boats. And every time I drive down I-95 going south, and I get close to Stewart, you can see where they filmed. They had where their shop was when they filmed there on the water. And every time I go over, I mean, the show's not even there. They don't even do it anymore. But I still go, oh, there's where Ship Shape was every time I do
Yep.
it.
Yep.
But very, very fascinating stuff. But it didn't just start there. You didn't start your company there. You continued to hone your craft after you built that boat. you moved on and started working at Hell's Bay. What did you do at Hell's Bay?
So I got hired to be in the lamination department, doing, spraying gel coat on molds, assisting with laying the skin coat or the first layer of fiberglass that goes into the mold that keeps the mold set so that nothing else happens during the production. Because
Hmm.
they vacuum their boat, so what they do is they put a bag on it, suck all the air. So they lay out all their composites, then they put a vacuum on it, they suck out all the air out of that mold, and then they inject resin into it. So when I was in the lamination department, I would just do that skin coat and the gel coat just so that when they were pulling a vacuum on it, the actual mold or the boat that you wanted to pull from the mold didn't pop off the mold and cause a whole bunch of issues. So I started in lamination and then I went off to their finishing department. So when you say finishing, it's just making things shine, right? Molds get pulled every couple days, right? Depending on the size of the shop. So there's always going to be defects in the mold that happen just from wear and tear. So my job was to go through and fix any of that, right? Make the boat look like the quality that the shop wanted to have. Um, I became the lead of the finishing department. I had a couple guys working underneath me. That's where I really crafted and honed in on the skill of kind of what our bread and butter is at a shop right now. A lot of restorations have to do with gel coat and non-skid. That's what I was doing at the shop. But I always had an interest in service. I looked over there and saw what those guys got to do every single day, and I thought it was just so cool, right? You got a boat that sometimes it was just buffing the gel coat, making it look good. Sometimes it's a non-skid job. Sometimes you got a boat that just came back from getting destroyed by a hurricane, and the owner's looking at you like, "Can you
Please help.
please fix this boat?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you do something?" Because those boats, for some people, it's not just a tool. It is a sentimental value. Like, hey, my
Yeah.
dad passed this on to me.
Yeah.
Um, and when stuff like that happens, or like a car accident, like you can go through insurance and they can total your boat, but that doesn't fix what that boat really meant to you, right? That
Yeah.
that boat was way more than just a boat. Um, so once I was the lead in the finishing department, I had talked to the owners and said, "Hey, I'd really like to be in that service department." Yep.
Nick, let me cut you off. We're quickly coming up on our first break. When we get back, more with Nick from Florida Skiffs. We're talking boat building. We're going to dive deeper into that. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
This is the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
All right, welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio. It is Monday. I'm fired up. We got a great show. We're learning a lot from Nick from Florida Skiffs. He's a boat restorer. But before we get back into the conversation, you know the deal. I want to connect with you on social media. All of the socials, you know where I'm at the Captain's Log TV on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. If you want to stay connected to everything, all things Captain's Log Radio, we release all new episodes Monday, Thursdays, and Saturdays on Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. So anywhere you go and listen to your podcast or radio, you can go there. Of course, every Monday right here on the Outdoor Radio Network at 11 a.m., following Captain Bob on the Hook with Captain Bob at 10. So make sure you're listening there. But again, let's connect on social media at the Captain's Log TV on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Nick, you guys want to follow you, if people want to follow you on your socials, where can they find you?
On our socials right now, our main ones are our Instagram, and also we post on our TikTok, just at Florida Skiffs. If they want to take a follow, we do have a YouTube channel. We're working on it right now. We're gonna be adding a bunch of DIY videos, something that you can probably learn something from, right? Where social
Cool.
media is more of the day to day. We want to put out our YouTube just so that people can learn, how to work on their own boat.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, before we went to the break, we got interrupted. Always that clock is always running. You were talking about you were in the service department at Hell's Bay, and you know what? There, I remember vividly when you were working there. You were the gel coat color matching master. You think about it, somebody has a boat. You have an older boat. You have a boat that's a few years old. You have a boat that's a guide boat and it spends a lot of time in the sun. Okay. Or you're putting your boat on a dry rack in a marina. It's going to get faded. The next thing you know, there's a gash in it, or there's a cut or whatever, a big scratch, and you want to get it fixed. You can't just go mix up some color and hopefully it matches. You want to make that blemish go away. That's the reason you are spending the money. You're going to seeing guys like Nick at Florida Skiffs and having your boat repaired. And you don't want it to not match. And Nick, you were just, I mean, unbelievable at making things go away and disappearing and matching colors. And that's part of, what you did over there at Hells Bay with the service department,
Mhm.
right?
Yep. Yep. That's probably bar none the hardest part of my job. Like you said, the colors change, right? If your boat is let's just say ice blue, very common color. Most people just look at it as blue. Well, there's greens, there's yellows, there's everything. Even when it comes out of the barrel from the factory, you still have to change that color because pigments settle in a barrel, and now you're talking about a boat that was years ago, right? The colors just never match. You can get close, but to make it disappear is one of the hardest things, and it can take anywhere from 15 minutes to make it match to
Mm,
I've been color matching for an hour and a half before. It's just one of those things that it takes a lot of patience. There's been multiple times, especially in areas where there's no corners to hide, right? When you're respraying, you look for areas that can help you, look for edges to hide your spray patches on. But when you're working an area, there's multiple times that I've sprayed one that I thought I had that gel coat spot on. And by the time I buffed it, buddy, we were off. We were
mm,
off and we had to resand and just start the process over again.
mm,
Um, that is definitely the most difficult part of the job.
mm,
And it takes a lot of practice and a lot of patience to get it right. But
mm.
at the company, we really do pride ourselves on taking that time. Like, hey, if we mess it up, we're gonna sand it and try it again, right? We're not just gonna look at you and just say, hey, bud, we tried. You know,
Yeah. That
there's
happened to
always,
my happened to my dad's boat. This is years ago. I'm talking, I was a kid. My dad's boat got messed up and it was involved in a car accident, and well, we got it fixed. And again, I was probably 9, 10 years old, and they took it somewhere to get repaired. Obviously, I had no say in where. I couldn't do any research. There wasn't the Instagram, or there wasn't the
yep,
internet. You couldn't Google shops and look at reviews. And the color was nowhere close.
yep.
Nowhere close. Now, granted, it's a burnt orange boat built in the 70s. Still have it, but the color was, like I said, nowhere close. It's like red. The
Yep.
rest of the boat's orange. Um, one day, one day I would love to have that boat completely redone. It's
Yep.
I think it was built in 75. Um, it's an Aero glass boat. You can find them if you Google it. You can find a few. It was the tarpon model. And I don't think this boat was built for tarpon fishing. Maybe it was. I don't know. But it's a tri-hull boat. And again, it's burnt orange. I'd love to have that boat just completely redone. But I would want it to still be burnt orange.
Yep.
And when, in fact, when I built my first boat, um, I wanted to build an orange boat. And my mom, I mean, I wasn't married at the time. My mom's like, no, you're not doing that. We already have one ugly orange boat. You're not going to build a brand new boat and make it orange. But I really did. And I was going to name it Julia. Because, like the orange Julius drink, I was going to name her
Yep.
Julia. But no, I ended up with Seafoam, not going the orange route. But that was something that you would do that always impressed me because it's difficult, you know?
Hmm.
And you've said it a couple times. Number one, you know what it's like being a client because you went through that process yourself. But number
Yep.
two, you're going to work on getting it right. And as a client, as somebody who's looking to have their boat fixed. You're right. I'm a sentimental. I wish this is something I could change about myself. I am a sentimental person.
Hmm.
And if I'm going to have something done, I want it to be done right. If I'm spending the money to restore something I care about, I know it's just a boat and silly and stupid. It's just a boat, but I care about, like, it's important to me. And if I'm having something done to it, I want it to be done right, which is
Yep.
why I call you. There has been times
Yep.
where I've had problems with my boat and I called you. Um, and obviously this isn't always the case. So I don't want to
Hmm.
set that precedence for people who are listening who might hire you to do some work, but I call you and you know that I'm a guide and I say, hey man, I got an issue with my boat and I need it fixed like
Yep.
ASAP. And you're like, dude, come on, bring it in.
Yep.
I'll take care of it. And
You,
that means the world to me. And I know that, when your mama makes you food and it just tastes good because it's your mama makes it because she does what? She does one ingredient that makes mama's food special. She just
yep.
makes it with love. And I feel like you do that with your boats, right? You
Hmm.
put your heart and soul in building boats and fixing boats that it comes across in your work. It comes across into the details. You're very detail oriented. It's the same when we're editing the TV show, like little things. Like you said it earlier, there you notice stuff on your boat that you would have done differently. It bothers you, you notice it, but no one else will. And we're
No,
editing
never.
the show, like there's little things I'm like, I don't like this, and I'll show my wife and she won't even notice.
Yep.
And our main editor's Jack, he and I we go back and forth about this all the time. We pick up on the little stuff and it's really a curse. Um, but we try to for there to be no distractions. And I feel like
Yep.
you build boats the same way. You don't want people to pick up a boat after a restoration process and go, wait a minute, I see this, I see that. And
Yep.
that's what sets you apart from the other guys in the business.
Yep. And I think that that is another difficult part, right? One of the things that we struggle with as a business is there's an idea, right? Everybody grew up, you take your truck to the shop, you're always worried about people trying to rip you off, trying to upsell you on stuff. I repair boats. I am not a salesman. I'm not. I'm a fisherman and I fix boats. There's been so many times that when we do these, like a simple restoration, right? Working on your exterior gel coat in a non-skid job. That will bring almost every boat looking brand new, right? You can get into the weeds and get into the wiring, get into the little minute details, but if you just do like a fluff and buff in a new non-skid job, your boat will look brand new. It just does. But when we're going through that, I try to talk to people and say, hey, do you see that gouge in your gel coat here? I would suggest that we fix that, right? So the problem is, where do you find that balance, right? I'm not trying to sell you on this, but I know because I've done it so many times, you're going to notice that when your non-skid looks brand new. And time again, they'll come to pick up their boat and they just look at me and go, dang, man, I see it now. I see it now, right? So, talking to people and with that stigma of being a repair shop, I just want anybody listening to know, like, hey, I was the client too. I get it. Like, I'm just giving you, I'm going to try to push you in the right direction, right? When it comes to colors, choose what you want. If you want burnt orange, we got you. That is, yeah, whatever would make you happy, awesome. I'll just guide you through the way so that you don't make the mistakes that we see time and time again, right? The extra 50 to $100 to fix that, you'll never notice it again. But if
Hmm.
you don't fix that, every time you hop on your boat, you're going to see it and it's
Annoy
just
you.
going to drive you crazy,
Yeah.
right? Because you got this brand new looking boat, but there's that one thing now, right? Because it really blended in when that boat was rough.
It's
But
probably
now
going
that
to
it looks
cost
brand
more to
new,
fix it. Probably going to cost more to fix it after the fact than
it
while you're
will.
already in there doing the work.
It will in a way that, it's not because the materials go up. It's, hey, if we're spraying non-skid, you're not paying for the time for us to protect your entire boat when we go respray this, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just a lot easier to fix those things before the boat looks brand new.
Yeah.
It changes the sequence of how we fix those. And now, if you come in after all that's done, typically it does cost more because there's a lot more care in protecting everything else around it than there
Mhm.
would be, if we're just going to sand all that off regardless, you don't have to
You
take as
know,
much time.
when I was in college, and we're close to the next break, but when
Mhm.
I was in college, the way I paid my way through school is I remodeled houses. I painted houses and I tore
Mhm.
houses apart. And a lot of times I'd go into a job and the flooring was out. And I would tell the people, do you want your ceiling painted while I'm here? I know we didn't talk about that, but you have no floor, you have no furniture. And
Yep.
it's a lot cheaper and faster and easier for me to do it now than after the fact because
Yep.
there's so much more that I have to do. And you just nailed it. That was exactly right. Hey, we've got Nick from Florida Skiffs here on the Captain's Log Radio. Don't go anywhere. We're going to dive deeper into fixing boats. So stick around. You might learn something. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back.
This is the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. I got Nick from Florida Skiffs with me today. We're talking boat restoration. We talked about a lot of stuff, talking about fixing your gel coat, matching your gel coat. We've talked about non-skid. Nick, let's talk about everything you offer. Like those are just two of the pieces on building a boat. If I have a boat that's got bad stringers or a rotten transom, what all do you offer? What kind of services can we do for restoring a boat?
Yep. We've done our best to make our shop, excuse me. We've done our best to make our shop like a one-stop shop for everything.
Hmm.
Right. There's a lot of things that I may not be a professional with, but being in the industry for so long, I've been able to make connections with the people. Like if you want a welder, I will not be welding your tower, but I can tell you I've been in it for longer than 10 years in this business, and I'll get you with the right guy.
Hmm.
I can install it for you, but when you talk about like stringers, glass work, gel coat work, wiring, we all do that in-house. But with part of being a one-stop shop, that's one of those things that's been very fortunate with where I worked prior to starting the business is I've gotten a chance to meet in my opinion, the best people in the entire Eastern region at
Hmm.
doing what they do. And they're all guys that are very similar, like personalities with me, that they're not just a welder, they're fishermen. They love what they do. They don't just build cushions for you, they're fishermen. They understand it. They pay attention to every single small detail. Um, so we've really made it a one-stop shop. Anything you really need, if I can't do it personally, I'm not going to lie to you. I'll tell you where to go. If it's in our shop, we can connect you with some of the subcontractors we have, and we can get anything that you need on your boat done.
Hmm. Hmm. You mentioned the fluff and buff, and I think my wife would agree as soon as all these spring breakers go back home that I need to go in. Me personally, need to go in for a fluff and buff because I'm getting a little rough around the edges, man. But tell me about the fluff and buff. Tell me about detailing boats because I have had my boat done, detailed, cleaned, and it looks amazing. Tell me, let's
Yep.
dive into that. If you're a DIYer and you want to learn how to do it, I watch these videos, they're addicting on Instagram of guys. It could be a car, it could be a boat, it could be whatever. And they pull this old, I'm gonna say a car. They pull this car
Yep.
out of a barn and it's covered in rat poop and all dust and just
Yep.
stuff. And they spray it down and they make it look brand new. I'm sitting there for like 5 minutes on Instagram. My feet are going numb. My wife's like, "Why haven't you moved?" I'm like, "Don't talk. This is incredible. Come look at this transformation on this car." Tell me about the fluff and buff.
So most of the time, you don't notice how bad oxidation is getting on your boat until it's terrible, right? It's kind of like the difference of having a child. You see them every single day, and then one day you just notice, like, man, you're getting big, dude. Like I didn't really notice versus seeing your nephew, right? That you might see once every couple months, and it's super noticeable, right? So it's your boat, you don't notice it as much as it goes on. As soon as you put a buffer or a wet sand and you see what color the hull used to be, it stands out like crazy. So even when you don't think your boat is that bad, you're probably going to have some oxidation on it. Um, and it kind of brings me back to what you were talking about with like the shows that you used to watch and they had sponsors and they use their stuff. I love one of the things that I get to do is try so many different products. What works best for me, what works best for other companies. When you're talking about a fluff and buff, you can make that gel coat shine and look pretty, but if you don't do something to protect it and
Mm,
seal it, you're going to be doing the same thing in 6 weeks, couple months, depending on how hard you use your boat. Um, so like one thing that we've gotten into real heavy is the ceramic coatings. And I've had a chance to work with 3 to 4 different companies now, not many, and see which ones I like.
mm,
And we've settled on one solely just because the upkeep for my customers is better. There's a lot of these ceramic coats that promise you, hey, 3 years warranty, your boat will shine great. We went with one, but the problem with those ones, you need to have special washes for your boat. That every couple months you have to wash it with a certain wash. I don't like that. I'm a boat owner, I'm a fisherman, I work with a lot of guides. I get it. They're tools. You don't have the time to say, wait, how long ago was it that I washed it with that wash? So we chose a ceramic coating that we do that has a 5 year warranty. The only thing that you have to do to keep up that warranty is bring it back into the shop one time a year, let me detail wash it and spray a top coat on it, and it's in and out. It's done.
mm,
There is nothing on your part. But when you're talking about those fluff and buffs, you're opening up that gel coat. You're making it shine. You're ripping off those top layers to reveal that color that it used to be. But the protection of that gel coat is going down because that oxidation has just filled in every single one of those little pores.
mm.
Now they're open. They're just waiting for more junk to get stuck inside of them. So when you're looking at a fluff and buff, you want to go with a sealer, right? Ceramic coats can be expensive. It can be a scary price tag at first, but when you look at 5 years of no maintenance, it really adds up.
Hmm.
And there's
Well,
ceramic
honestly,
coats.
man, this is there's I'm a busy guy
Mhm.
between the family and guiding and the TV show and the radio show. I'm busy, and the last thing I have time for is to really dive into fluff and buff in my boats.
Yep.
And that's where you come in. That's where I can drop off a boat and say, thank you. Um, time, you're going to put a price on your time. And
Mhm.
if I drop off the boat and I know A, it's going to be done correctly, and B, that time that I'd be spending cleaning my boat is not going to be done as fast because I don't have the experience. So I'm going to learn as I go and maybe get faster over the years, or I can support you. I can drop off a boat. You can clean it, and then I can get other things accomplished. And I'm very much a DIYer.
Yep.
I do not like the other couple months ago, our hose spigot out front was leaking, and my wife kept telling me, "Okay, can you please fix this?" Absolutely, babe. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. And then like months go by, and I get home, and she goes, "Hey, I got an estimate to fix that." And I was like, "Oh man." I don't want to pay someone to do something I can do. Like I just need an hour to go to Lowe's and buy the part and do it
Yep.
myself. And she's like, but that's the problem. You don't have the hour.
Yep.
And so I had a suck it up buttercup and I paid the guy to do it. Can I tell you how good it felt to come home from guiding all day and go, oh, that's fixed. I don't have to do it. I
Yep.
mean, I had to pay for it, but I don't have to do it. And now I can focus on XYZ that I have to get done. So
Yep.
there are things that are worth going in and seeing a professional and having it done right the first
Yep.
time. And so
Yep.
that's where you come in, man. And,
And
and
then
I go ahead.
and then when you talk about like a fluff and buff, as simple and as fun as that sounds to even say, right? Oh, I'm just gonna do a fluff and buff. Like it's a dirty job, right? You're taking your boat off the trailer because if you don't, your trailer just gets just gets hammered with stuff. Your trailer is gonna look like crap at the end. Taking it off the trailer. It's wearing a respirator all day when you're sanding. It's buffing and getting buffing compounds slung all over your face. Like it is a tire and, a laborious job. Like
Mm,
it's not as simple as just like, a wipe on, wipe off situation. Like it really does take a lot of elbow grease to make it look
mm,
right and a lot of time to make it look like it just came from the factory. So I agree that is one of those things that, and if you don't know gel coat and you go to hitting your boat with sandpaper, good luck, man. Like there's a lot of things, a lot of mistakes that I've made throughout the years that I've learned how to avoid, right? Sanding things too thin and you kind of know what to look for when you've done it for so long. But if you just grab a DA and start sanding your boat, like you could very quickly run into some issues that you're not prepared for.
yeah.
Um,
I've learned a lot on YouTube University. I've learned a lot of things. I've fixed a lot of things around the house because of
mhm.
that. But you just said it, man. That's why people hire guides. You can go fishing on
Yep.
your own and find fish, but you can cut down that time. If you are visiting, majority of the people I take fishing are here on vacation. They could go and rent a
Yep.
boat and figure it out in themselves, or they can pay a little money and go straight to success and not worry about figuring out how do I get to where are the fish. There's a lot of water in Mosquito
Yep.
Lagoon and the Indian River Lagoon, and if you don't know where the fish are, you're going to waste a lot of time. And you are eliminating that wasting the time and mess ups, and because you have done it so many times, you can do it in your sleep.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's one of those that's spot on. You've spent years out on the water just learning, making mistakes and learning from those mistakes, finding the things that work for you. Um, and that's the same thing that we do, right? There's so many hours that have gone into making a boat look pretty, right? As simple as that is, that's just what we do. We just make boats look good. And there's behind the scenes, there's years of work that go into that
Hmm.
to make people happy with the end result. Definitely not our first time doing it. Like,
Oh, I love it, man. I absolutely love it. And like I said, your work speaks for itself when you post on social and you see the before and afters, you see the oxidation on the gel coat and on the hulls, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa,
yep.
that looks amazing. That was incredible. Or you see a boat that's a guide boat and it's got all this oyster rash under the
Hmm.
bottom. It's got a non-existent, non-skid, or all these stains, or you've got ripped up seats and you're taking all this out. You're seeing all this before and afters, man. It really makes a huge difference. And all the work you're
Hmm.
doing, absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Thank
I
you.
love it, man. I absolutely love it. Like I said, I love doing stuff on my own, but there comes a time where you need to push out to a professional to get it done right the first time and save yourself a lot of time, even though you're spending a little bit of money. Hey, we're coming up on our next break. We've got Nick from Florida Skiffs here, the boat restoration genius, the master. The dude is incredible. More when we get back here on the Captain's Log Radio. Don't go.
This is the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. I got Nick from Florida Skiffs here, boat restoration specialist. Listen, we both love fishing, and one thing you've said throughout the show, Nick, is, and I really, you nailed it. You said, I love to fish, and so when I'm on a boat, I'm doing things that work out for fishing. You said you have guys that do welding and they all love to weld, but they all love to fish. So they're thinking like an angler. You've got a
Mhm.
guy that does cushions and they get out on a boat and they're running across Tampa Bay and it's bouncy and they know how it feels on their
Mhm.
butt when they're running that boat. So they're building a cushion that's going to feel good when you're running across open water. So I
Yep.
love that you incorporate that into your boat restorations. Same with our
Mhm.
camera guys. All of our camera guys for the Captain's Log Radio love to fish. And so when we're fishing for tarpon, they have the expectation. They know what that tarpon's going to do. When we're
Mhm.
out on the flats looking for redfish, they are also helping look for redfish. They're looking, they know what to look for or what to expect, like a
Yep.
redfish tailing. And so their shots are, they're ready to shoot that shot because they know what those fish
Mhm.
are going to do. So it really helps having those people who are working on your boats love to fish because they're thinking about it all the time. And you and I both fish and grew up fishing similar water with the Mosquito Lagoon and the Indian River Lagoon. And you've also done so a lot of tournaments, right? Used to fish a
Yep.
lot of tournaments. Didn't you fish those with your dad?
I did. Yeah, yeah. We started fishing the Bossman series back when they used to hold those in the lagoon as a trail series. Like I think it was like 6 months, something like that. And every month there was one tournament all the way up, and then we would fish tournaments up in Jacksonville together. Yeah, me and him, it was a lot of bonding that got done through fishing, right? And when you fish the way that you do, right? When you're with your clients, I'm sure you maybe talk to them a little bit different than if you're with a buddy who strictly just sight fishes, right? There's different languages that you have to learn when you're on that boat, when you're spotting fish out for people.
Mhm.
Um, and learning how to do that can be frustrating and but fun. Obviously, you're fishing, right? There's nothing but fun to be had. But fishing the way that we do, it requires constant talking all the
Mhm.
time. Whether it's just, shooting the crap with your buddy, but at the same time, you're so alert. So getting a chance to go out there and do that with my dad, I couldn't ask for anything better than that.
Awesome. Is that how you got into fishing? Was fishing with your dad?
Yep. Yep. So we grew up fishing a little bit, but we were more of like a hunt camp family. And when we got older, he transitioned into sight fishing and fell in love with it, and then he brought me out with it, and then I just completely fell in love with it, right? Because
Mhm.
you're stalking the fish. It's not
Yeah.
just sitting in a corner throwing a bait out and waiting, which can be productive. There's days that we still do that when the weather's bad, the sight's bad. Like there's days that that's what you got to do to go catch one. But when you're poling the flats and you're seeing them before you catch them, um, yeah,
Mhm.
that's my favorite to do.
Yeah. Well, you said you started out hunting. You were a hunting
Yep.
family, and
Hmm.
transitioning to stalking fish on the flats is very much like hunting. You are
Yep.
pursuing these fish. You got a guy in the back of the boat pushing the boat, and you've got someone on the front of the boat who is looking as well, but they are with the rod and reel ready to make the presentation.
Hmm.
And it is definitely a team sport. Okay.
Yep.
The guy in the back of the boat, the guide, like what I do, I'm looking, but I'm also communicating to my angler what I see, how far away I see. Uh, we use the clock method, if you will, where the nose of the boat, the point on the bow is 12 o'clock, and I'm looking to my left. Typically, I'm pulling a shoreline where I can keep that sun behind me so that we can see into the water better. Okay. And then I'm looking from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock, but I'm looking beyond the boat. So I always encourage my clients to look at that, you know, 30 feet and closer view.
Hmm.
So, because I might be staring at a shoreline and there might be a fish that pops up a whole lot closer that I'm not going to see. So again, it's definitely a team sport. Both people are involved, and then it happens. Then you spot that fish, and then the communication it changes.
Hmm.
Your heart starts beating a little faster. your adrenaline starts to pump. You start getting goosebumps, and then you have to really get in check. You have to really remind yourself, calm down. Because if you're too excited, and it's something I struggle with,
Yep.
if you're too
Yep.
excited, you struggle to speak clearly. So you start talking faster. I always talk faster. I'm like, oh, right, right, right. And I get really excited, but I have to chill out so I can effectively communicate where that fish is. Because if the angler does not see the fish or doesn't see the fish fast enough, you're going to miss your opportunity. You're going to miss the shot. Because fish don't just sit still. They
Yep.
move. They have tails. They swim. And if they get spooked, if they feel something, if a bird flies over, if a stingray flips out, you know, if you fart too loud, they're
Yeah.
going to hear it, man. You're fishing in a foot of water. Okay.
Hmm.
And so you've got to be concise and accurate with your cast, concise and accurate with your description. 50 feet, 10 o'clock. I point my push pole. Move your rod right there. Do you see it? Oh, a little higher, a little higher. You see it? Yep, yep, yep. I got it. I got it. Then the presentation is made, and then the
Hmm.
fish reacts, and then the fish eats it, and then everyone freaks out and they're screaming excited, but it doesn't end there. You still have to get the fish from the boat. And that is so much fun, dude.
Yep. Yep. It's a
So
it's a
much fun.
team it's a team effort, just like you said, like a perfect call out for us. Like we do yards, and the hard thing with learning that was right. It's a different language that you're speaking from the back of the boat. You're not just, hey, look to your right. Well, right o'clock is your 1 o'clock all the way to your nine. Like it, there's such a big area. So when I used to grow up and fish with my dad, learning that call out was one of the biggest struggles on learning how to sight fish. And he used to do this thing that would drive me crazy. If I said, Dad, to your right, he would look straight down at the floor of the boat and say, I need a time and a distance. And I'd be like, no, it's right there. It's right there. And he'd be like, just look straight down and be like, I need a time and a distance. And it just forces you to practice that muscle of, hey,
Yeah.
3 o'clock, 15 yards, right? And it just, you're working so hard pulling the boat. And then he would just look down at his feet and it would just drive me crazy. I'm glad he did it now because you get used to that language and how to do those call outs to help that
Yeah.
guy on the front. But that's the tricky part is once that language gets set, then it gets really fun because then you're both speaking the same thing. You know how to put that person in the right position. Yeah, and then you bring fly fishing into that, and it's a whole different ball game.
Completely different ball game. And for me, for fly anglers, I've got a fly angler in the morning, and they're from Colorado, and they focus on trout. And so that style of fishing is completely different than what we're doing. And, and
Yep.
you had said you have a different language when you're with your dad. It's something you guys have worked on and practiced for years.
Hmm.
I've got one day.
Yeah, that's
Sometimes
rough.
I've got 4 hours and that's it, half day, to take someone fishing and do exactly what we're talking about. They want to sight fish and they have no experience. And that
Yep.
is, it is not it's not an easy sport.
No.
Some days it is. Some days the fish don't care. They're going to eat and they're excited. You see these videos of Louisiana, and I've experienced it. It doesn't matter what you throw that lure in the water, and the fish is like, whoa, whoa, what was that? And they go after and find it and eat it. That's
Yep.
not the case most days on Mosquito Lagoon or the Indian River Lagoon. So you
Yep.
have to really, number one, you need to be honest with your guide when you tell them your abilities, fly or spin. You need to practice casting, fly or spin
Yep.
before you get to your fishing day, because the day of your charter is not the day to learn how to cast your fly rod or
Yeah.
how to cast at a bucket 60 feet from your boat, right?
Yep. How to double haul. When you look at fly fishing, that's a world in its own. There's so many different types of fly fishing. If they're coming from the Carolinas and they fish the creeks, guess what? They can be the best in the world at catching brook trout in a creek.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you can come to Mosquito Lagoon and
It doesn't
face
translate.
and face an 8-mile-an-hour wind at your face and be able to double haul and make that cast at that distance that you need. That's that tricky game that, you as a guide, I'm sure that you work on that and how to deal with that, but that's a huge challenge that a lot of people are going to face.
Well, here's something I always do. Number one, I am never, I am never going to yell, scream, or cuss at you
Yep.
because that's not going to help. That's not
Hmm.
going to make you better. And that is common practice in the guide industry. So if you book a
Yep.
guide and he does that to you, fish, pay him, and at the end of the day, tell him he's an idiot. Don't do that. Tell him you didn't appreciate it. Okay. Number two, okay, I like to have easy fish, and we got a minute left, so we're going to
Yep.
wrap this up quick. I like to have easy fish. I want you to do, let's go accomplish your goal. Let's go after these fish. Let's go try to sight fish one. And if we're struggling, let's learn something. I really want you to walk away from our fishing trip having learned something. Okay.
Hmm.
We're going to practice that. We're going to learn that double haul. I'm going to teach you that technique. But then number three, we're going to go hit those easy fish. We're going to go find that group of schoolie trout. We're going to go find, they're not massive, they're not big, but you know what they're going to do? They're going to tug on your line and you're
Yep.
not going to skunk and you're going to feel better about it and you're going to walk away learning something. So that's always something I want to do. Nick, we got 20 seconds. Where can people find you? How do they get a hold of you?
Phone number 321-704-1584. Message us on Instagram, TikTok, any of our social medias at Florida Skiffs. By all means, we're here to help you.
Awesome. Hey, it's Captain Jonathan Moss, Captain's Log Radio. We had Nick, Florida Skiffs. Check him out. You won't be disappointed. The dude is a legend. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.